I'll introduce everyone. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Chat with Green Aggies. My name is Mang Mangu. I'm professor in the horticulture department, professor extension specialist. And today with us, we have Erfang Bafai, soon to be doctor from East Texas, Overton Research and Extension Center. We have Miss Laura Miller from Tarrant County, and we also have Paul Winsky from Harris County. All right, I think that's all the panelists that we're going to have today. So just a little overview. So today I will talk a little bit about crepe myrtle pruning, why we should do and why we shouldn't do certain practices and stuff. And Erfang is going to share his insecticide efficacy trials this year. And who's going to do plant of the week? Paul, what you going to do? What plant are you going to talk about?
I am going to talk about the Texas superstar, the Tidal Wave Petunias. We have three of them.
Okay, Tidal Wave Petunias. Okay, that sounds great.
And Mung, I would just like to say that you owe Eric Miller some fruit because he got
Oh, all right. Well, thank you, Laura. Well, Eric, if you ever in the College Station area, you're welcome to, come find me and I'll get you the prize. So for all the others in the audience, what I have here in the background is a cut surface of persimmon. And when I presented this to my kiddos, by the way, they all like persimmons, but when I presented this way, they said, "Oh, pies, are you going to cut it like pie?" Yes, I said, this is going to be the most healthy fruit pie that you ever have. So they really liked it. I think the kids, they just, if you present certain things, healthy things in not so healthy way, present fruit in pie, in the pie's name, they really like that. Okay, back to crepe myrtle.
Wait, time out. Wait, so is this the persimmon? Because there's like two different types, right? There's the one that you can eat and it's sweet while it's still firm. And then there's the other ones that are soft that you kind of cut off the top and you eat with a spoon. So is that why you cut off the top of this one?
No, this is a hard one. This is actually the hard one. So no, I don't cut the top.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry, my TA was crying. So last week, you'll have seen this photo, in my talk, in mine and Laura's talk about, not your typical crepe murder. So this is often a practice that people have been doing. And just in this particular case, and as you can see that, so these trees has been repeatedly, cut it from this line. And then later on, they went up a layer to cut it. So this specific practice was done. This one was pruned back in November. And if you're probably you guys are probably pretty familiar with the weather pattern in the wintertime in Texas. We have these temperatures, go up and down. So what happened to these was we had a cold snap. First of all, I don't know why they do this kind of practice in November. Anyway, it's not good. It's not good whatsoever. But then on top of that, all these crepes were murdered in November. So then we have some warm time, and all these crepes start to sprout out. If you think about it, sprout out, right after the cutting in November, in December. Then we had a little freezing event. So all you see here are brown little sprouts out of those tops. So basically, if you think about all those what this practice does, and I think Laura mentioned it last time, what it does is you take all the growth out. Basically, this type of pruning, you take all the growth out, and then you're forcing the dormant buds to come out. So think about those new growth as the stuff in your checking account versus these dormant buds are the money in your savings account. So by doing this kind of practice, you're kind of taking things out of your savings account, and in this particular case, all the money that that you took out of your savings account just got lost in the bear market, from this freezing event. So all those little things are gone. So typically, when you prune the crepe myrtle in this way, this is what you get. If you look at it, this is Natchez crepe myrtle. This is a very commonly grown crepe myrtle in the South. Natchez, Muskogee. What's the other one? There are three very popular.
I would say Tuscarora.
Tuscarora, yes. Okay, so the white Natchez, pink Tuscarora, and the lavenderish Muskogee. So these three are very common, very popular, big trees, grow fast. The nurseries love to grow them because you grow a very good, decent size in a very short amount of time compared to some of the others. It's interesting that crepe myrtles are catching up in the Northwest, in Oregon, Washington area. Guess what 3 cultivars that they like to grow? Guess what those 3 are? White Natchez, pink Tuscarora. Yes. Yeah. Pink Tuscarora and lavenderish Muskogee. So this is what you get. This is normally what you get when you repeatedly murder the crepes. So take a look at this. It's in July the 14th. This particular picture was taken in July the 14th. It seems like this plant is in full bloom in College Station. You remember Laura mentioned last time that one of the effect of murdering crepe myrtle is it gonna delay flowering, or is it gonna make flowering early? Laura, you remember?
Yeah, it definitely delays flowering. And I put a little link to that crepe myrtle pruning fact sheet from the University of Florida that contains that research. But yeah, okay. Delayed flowering.
Okay. So basically, if you think about it, again, I'm going to come back to this one. You force in these things to, these little buds, dormant buds to grow. You have to accumulate certain, photosynthesis products for the plants to have the energy to flower. So, instead of growing directly from a new growth, there is no from dormant to undormant. So, definitely delay flowering a lot. So this is just and also this is often what you see, the flowering pattern of murdered crepe myrtle. So one is delay flowering. What's the other one? Is that the flowering amount? Is it going to increase the amount of flowering, or is it going to decrease the amount of flowering? Laura, you remember?
I do remember. Does anybody else remember? I definitely remember. So you will decrease the number of flower clusters. But
really? Do we have picture to prove that?
The flower clusters themselves will be large. Yes. Looky there. Woo! Muskogee.
Yes, look at here. So this is a natural form of Muskogee. So let's take another look of this one, the murdered one, and this is a natural one. And this is if y'all are familiar with the College Station area, you may know where I took these pictures. It's right on Highway 6. It's one of the banks. It's at one of the banks. Just look at the flowering power. The amount of flowers that these plants have. So this is the same. This is the Natchez crepe myrtle. This is a Natchez crepe myrtle that, and look at the date of the of these flowering. So remember that murder, the crepe myrtle, that's in the middle of July versus this is the middle of June. And also, oh, I have more pictures. By the way, this is my TA. So occasionally you may hear a little crying from this TA. Don't laugh. She was included in this picture to show you the scale. So she is my TA. She is paid by Texas A&M. You know, her health insurance and everything is paid by Texas A&M. So she's a legitimate TA, and also other TAs. So, you know, to show you that, again, this is in the middle of June. So, you know, the flowering, you know, is basically delayed in this case for about a month. If you think about it, for about a month. So that's another you know, thing that you have to think about it when you you know, raise your power tools, try to murder these things. Just, you know, think about it. So this is another angle, and actually this picture was took in was taken in the middle of June, but it's actually slightly past the peak. This is in the same. This is in the same home landscape. It is the same home landscape, same plant, slightly smaller, and as you can see from this one, it's slightly past the peak. So remember this picture too. So this is a picture just taken a couple of days ago. I want to show you the pruning practice that this particular homeowner landscape is doing. Remember this, right? So as you can see that, you know, in this picture, I mean, it's huge. It's huge. So it's huge. And I think that what they were doing is that, oh, it's going over. Notice that they just have the new fence and these are just literally, you know, just pouring over. So what they were doing is they try to limb up. You know, what they were trying to do is try to limb up the stems so that they wouldn't have this kind of bending over. You know, the Natchez has like really, really great flowering power. I mean, literally you see that when they're flowering, they're just like so heavy, and then all the seed heads, so pretty heavy. So I think so that's what they did. And as you can see that, so from a crepe murder standpoint, they may think, oh man, nothing is done here. Nothing is done, but actually plenty was done. So again, from the side picture, remember this one, you know, with all the branches falling over. So what they did here is they limbed up. So the nice thing, or say maybe the correct way of doing crepe myrtle pruning is after you're done. If we look at this picture here, after you're done, and then compared to this picture, after you're done, you may think, it looks about the same. It looks about the same. It looks like, you know, just like you have a nice haircut after you're done with the haircut. It's like, oh, it looks about the same. You know, you don't have the dramatic, you don't have the dramatic change from before. And of course, you know, we have seen some of the prunings with dramatic change. Okay, so I did not have a chance to go to the homeowner's backyard to look at what they have done to this. But since they also have these trees, and they also did some pruning. You know, they also did some pruning. So I'm gonna point out to some of the prunings that they've done here to show you some of the things. Although they did certain good job, but they also have some little things that they could pay more attention to. I see Laura's eyes and open up, and Paul is taking a close look at the picture. What do you all think? Speak up while I drink some water.
Well, I would say that crepe myrtle is actually nice to prune, because if you are like removing a branch like they did here, it's real easy to see the the branch collar, because just the way the crepe myrtle is. I mean, like, it's real easy to see, but they went a bit beyond on that one. So, you know, you want to take it off at the smallest point. They kind of left a little bit too much on some of these. They could have been a little bit better cuts. But also, I don't know what they're doing over here, like leaving just a bare stem kind of.
This one
Yeah,
here?
yeah,
Yeah, that doesn't look right.
yeah.
But their cuts look a little not great either. But yeah. But I you know, when you're pruning a crepe myrtle like that, though, even though they are so tough that they can handle crossing branches and graft together okay and be okay. But generally, you don't want branches crossing, you know, inside of a.
So like somewhere here,
Yeah.
if they could probably take one out or something, right?
Cross,
Okay.
you know, you don't want that. I take out suckers sometimes. Sometimes crepe myrtles, these are not really doing it. They'll sucker up from the base. They'll send up some shoots, and I will take those off because I don't like the way that looks. But otherwise, they don't need a lot of pruning. They really don't need a lot of pruning. They're not a plant that you have to prune. And I would say that in general, in your home landscape, you know, unless you just really love pruning, in which case I would get some different plants and go for something else.
I don't know whether they love pruning or some just love using their power tools.
I don't know. But
and also I want to show you that this pruning was done in August. About the end of August.
So crepe myrtles, in my opinion, have like really nice summer August color. Usually they have flowers in August when most things don't. So I definitely wouldn't want to take that away. You know, I wouldn't want to prune it then when it's kind of doing its thing. Most plants like to be pruned in their dormant season. Crepe myrtles are also incredibly pretty in the winter if you don't prune them up, because the bark is exfoliating. It's really attractive. Notches is one of the prettiest ones with that like cinnamon color underneath. And you know, if you don't prune it, you're going to have, you know, something like this, just this beautiful cinnamon colored bark, and you won't have any you know, bad looking cuts to look at. It'll just be attractive in the winter.
And the other thing, I think, generally, you know, pruning during the dormant season, you have a better look of the structure, and that's when, you know, it's easier to, you know, look at it and think about it. You know, what stems to take out, you know, what trunk to take out. And also, I'm going to show you some more pictures here. You know, pruning during the summer may not be a good practice. So if you see that, by the way, the TA is looking for additional clues from the pruning practice. So this is the same. Remember this branch? So this is, again, this is the same angle. This is the same angle that I took this week. So this here, like I said, you know, the dormant shoots is coming out. And if you remember, if you know, this is already November. So those tender shoots are very vulnerable when it comes to freezes and stuff. And, you know, some of the bad pruning that you can see here, you know, from the last slides, they, like you said, like Laura said, you know, the collars are actually pretty easy to identify. It's actually, you know, pretty easy to do a good job in crepe myrtle thinning pruning. So this is, again, you know, so this is from the other side and showing you that, you know, it's these little things are coming out. So this is a big one that they took out, a big stem. And as Laura said, you know, crossing branches is one thing. A lot of the practice is that, you know, in nurseries that they put like 3 or 4 rooted cuttings to start with. So
they're growing together, right?
Yeah, they're growing together. You know, when they were stuck, you know, they were maybe just a pencil, the pencil size, or or slightly thicker. But as they grow, they're gonna grow kind of into each other. So when you use a power tool, definitely take it easy. If you just accidentally cutting one off and then go into the other, I mean, that's gonna damage that one significantly. And actually, if I have an option that I will take the one in the middle out, if I have the option, instead of letting it go out. You can see that that's my hand there. It's a pretty big trunk here, and all these savings account, quote unquote savings account, is being forced to be out. So just a little nub here, this is just taken. This is the collar here. It would be pretty easy to make a cut here, instead of letting these little things going out. See, this was taken previously, so it's gradually healing over. It's gradually healing over, as you can see here. This is another just example of a bad job. More the stump here. Okay, so a close up to the plant's inside, and as you can see that some of these things was probably from a similar not so good pruning job that they have things growing up. So I would say in general that this one is doing a pretty good job. Except for little things like this, just do it slightly closer to the root collar to prevent this kind of sprouting of from the dormant buds. And there are plenty to so this one wouldn't have the this is in the same neighborhood. This is in the same neighborhood, just a different house. Still people are murdering the crepes, so we definitely need to put a stop on this. There's just so many disadvantages of this type of pruning or abusing. Again, that's a second tree from the house. As Laura mentioned that crepe myrtle, this particular one is a Tuscarora. It has plenty of either sooty mold from crepe myrtle bark scale, infestation, and as you can see that suckering is pretty bad on a bunch of crepe myrtles. So at this stage, we just had a light frost. Not long ago, so the plant is not particularly looking great, but if I am the homeowner, I would take these suckers out anytime during the year. But then for thinning pruning, I will definitely wait until the leaves, until the leaves are all gone. And they have some of the dead branches from the previous winter, and those, during the pruning, I think those could be taken out. Am I missing anything? Laura, Paul, you have something to add?
I would just say that my advice usually is, when in doubt, just don't prune your crepe myrtle, unless you have some compelling reason, like suckers, or, if you don't have a reason to prune it, just let it be. The prettiest ones are the ones that you see that have had the least amount of whacking.
Yeah, and just because your neighbor prunes it that way doesn't mean you should do the same thing.
Nope, it shouldn't be contagious like it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So back to this one, this murdered one. Remember, this one put out the flower, in the middle of July, and this is probably all it's gonna get. If you murder crepes this way, this is probably all you're gonna get. And I'm going to show you a totally different scenario that you shouldn't murder the plants this way. So this is a different plant in a similar neighborhood. So the nursery actually did a pretty good job. So they, when the trees were first produced, they put 2 natches and 2 muskogee in the same pot. So what you get is that you get a bicolor. You get two colors of crepes. So as you can see here, this is in middle of June, and this is already at kind of at the tail end. At the tail end of the flowers. Definitely at the tail end of the natchez, and the muskogee is going to the tail end. So this is in June. This is in June. And this is in August. As you can see, so in August that you get this second flush. In August, you get this second flush of both natchez and muskogee. How do I know it's second flush? And I mean, these are all the seed heads. As you can see that, these are all the seed heads. And then about a foot, about 10 to 12 inches back to the, inside the canopy, that you have another twig, you have another flower panicle coming up. So if you just don't murder your crepe myrtle, that in most areas in Texas, I wouldn't say well, let me take that back. Probably not most, definitely not the northern border of Texas, but in a lot of areas in Texas, our temperature, our humidity is good enough that we often see this kind of second flush of flowers. And then going back to the murdered one, it just wouldn't have that enough energy and stuff to send out this second flush. And as you can see that, this was from the first flowering back in June. And then, inside of the canopy that we have, sent out a second flowering panicle. And this is in the case of muskogee. The first flush, and then, inside the canopy, second flush. The second flush, a lot of times, is not as showy as the first flush. If you think about it, the plant got to divert some energy into making the seeds and then, doing the flowering. So it's not going to be as great as the first flush, but still, it's much better than the murdered one. The bonus slides here is how do you kill a crepe myrtle? Any thoughts on this, Laura and Paul? How do you kill a crepe myrtle?
It looks pretty wet. I think they may have overwatered it and you got some root rot in there.
I would concur. They do like to be in full sun with good drainage and good air circulation. That's not the situation there.
Bingo! This is a bathroom, and there has been leaks from the bathroom.
Oh.
So this was a pretty little a crepe myrtle, and then just from the constant leaking from the bathroom, I just took it out. So yeah. All right, I think that's the end of my presentation. Thank you all.
All right.
We're gonna go to the next presenter, and we'll answer questions at the end.
Thank you, Mung Mung. Let me share my screen here. Can everyone see that? Here we go. It's in presentation mode now. All right. So I thought I'd give a quick little overview of some of the research trials that we have done this last year. So every single year we have a number of insecticide trials testing different or new insecticide treatments against common pests or new emerging pests, as well as plant protection trials where we're trying to determine whether certain pesticides will actually harm the plants for pesticide registration. So I won't go through that because that's a little bit more in the pesticide registration side of things, but I'll talk about some of the insecticide efficacy. And similar to Mung Mung, I also have a TA. Here he is right here. This is my son, Silas. As you know, 2020 was a strange year. So there were times when I had to bring my son with me to water the plants and help count insects and eat some of the insects if they looked palatable. So some of the trials I'll be talking about, we did do an aphid efficacy trial, one on whiteflies, citrus mealybugs on hibiscus, and lastly, crepe myrtle bark scale. And this year, this is all potted material, so nothing in the landscape. This is a little bit more geared towards on the production side of things, although some of the active ingredients may be relatable to the landscape, and thus may be helpful in that sense as well. So for the aphid trial, we're looking at aphids on pansies within cages. We're infesting them and treating them with different insecticides. So here's a table for your reference. There's going to be a few tables and several graphs in this that, as you know, these webinars are recorded. So you can go back and screenshot or write down this information later, or I will leave them up for a brief moment so you can quickly screenshot them if you so wish. But the main product we were testing here was Protea, which is by OHP, either as a foliar application or as a drench. And we have 3 different drench application rates. And lastly, we had clean grow, or also known as uptake. So uptake can be mixed in a tank mix and applied to your plants. To determine any insecticidal activity of that. It was suggested that it might have some impact on aphids. And lastly, water. And so looking at the data, so on the bottom here, you can see days after treatment. So, from 0 days when we actually applied overall insecticides to 3 days, 7 days, to 14 days after, our insecticide treatments. You can see on the y-axis here, I have average aphids per plant, with 0 and no other numbers on there. So I need to fix that graph. But you can see here that they all start with very similar numbers of aphids. If we follow the UTC, the untreated control, you can see, as you would expect, if you do nothing, the number of aphids increase quite dramatically to the point where the plant is quite dead. If we look at just clean grow, so that's uptake, we can see some pretty reasonable suppression early on, and then the aphids recover. So as you can imagine, it's kind of a contact, and it provides some suppression. So tank mixing it might actually help provide some additional suppression, possibly. Then we look at, let's say, the Protea foliar application first, and you can see we get the quickest and most effective knockdown of aphids, and then we get some very good residual. The drenches as well. So if you are, these are for, let's say, hanging baskets, and you're about to hang some baskets up that can be hard to apply foliar applications on, you could do a Protea drench. And you can see all rates of Protea by week 7. We get very good suppression by week 14, basically no aphids. So all the Protea applications provide a very good suppression or very good control of aphids, especially by 14 days after treatment. And that could be applied either as a foliar application or as a drench. Going on to a whitefly trial, we had 2 separate kind of trials here. This is whiteflies on poinsettias. And very similar to the aphid trial, there was some information suggesting that clean grow, again, might provide some suppression of whiteflies. So we did a cleanup trial, which is how clean grow is traditionally used, right? I mean, your greenhouse, let's say, is somewhat empty and you're trying to clean it out. You could do a spray of clean grow, not only to potentially get rid of fungi that are lingering around, but also insect populations. In order to determine, would this actually work well to, let's say, if you had lingering whitefly populations, would it work well to manage them? The second one was if we have whiteflies on the plants and we spray clean grow on them, can we, again, suppress our whiteflies? So looking at that cleanup trial, basically what we did was we introduced 14 adult whiteflies into each cage. You zip it up. There's no plants in there at this point. And the treatments were one of 3. Either one, we did nothing, so they were not sprayed. Secondly, we sprayed water. This was the second treatment that we would spray water, or the third treatment, which was spraying clean grow at 2 fluid ounces per gallon. And then we would introduce the poinsettia in there, subsequently right away. So essentially we're trying to see, whether any of these treatments would knock down and prevent those whiteflies from establishing on your new, clean poinsettias that you're putting into your greenhouse, let's say. So what we found here, right? So if you look at the UTC, that's this orange, that's the untreated control, we can see a drastic increase in the average number of whitefly nymphs 3 days after treatment. It looks like it decreases, but that's because they're going from the nymph stage to the pupal stage, as we'll see here in the next graph. The same happens with water, all right? So water alone, right? And this is really important to test, all right? Because it's possible that something in our Overton water, maybe just spraying water gums up their wings and makes them ineffective. But no, even spraying just water, right? We still get whitefly populations. We get whitefly nymphs. However, when you applied the clean grow, you can see here the whitefly populations are very low. Now, it should be noted, right? So these are in small cages and we're spraying in there. So contact is, really easy. It's really easy to contact those adult whiteflies. Be interesting to see how this scales, let's say to a larger cage setting. It'd be great if we could do it in a greenhouse setting, but then it becomes a little bit less feasible because we would need, at least 12 separate greenhouses and be able to count all the whiteflies in all of those greenhouses and control for all other conditions. If we look at the whitefly pupae, like as I mentioned, after that day 3, it looks like we see a decrease in whitefly nymphs in the untreated control. That's because they're becoming pupae, right? So you can see here in the untreated control and the water group, we have all the nymphs becoming pupae. Here, we don't have any pupae forming when we apply clean grow as a cleanup. Now, how about for plant protection? So we, in this case, have infested poinsettias. The adults are all removed off there, but there are nymphs. We're placing them in cages and spraying them either with nothing or with clean grow. In this case, is at 0.13 fluid ounces per gallon. So that's more similar to the uptake application. And you can see here, so days after application, the untreated control and clean grow, you can see that clean grow did not appear to provide any suppression of whiteflies directly on the plant. And we only applied this at day 0, so only did a single application. So it is possible that if you did multiple applications, and especially if you're getting the adults, then you might be drastically reducing their population for subsequent generations. But with a single application, we saw basically no suppression. So there'll be some more follow-up studies there. We can also see, same thing for whitefly pupae. Again, we see no suppression when we're applying clean grow directly on the plant that's infested. Next is citrus mealybug, which we typically do not associate with hibiscus. So we usually think pink hibiscus mealybug or Madeira mealybug are 2 common mealybugs on hibiscus. But we did find, based on physical characters, what appears to be citrus mealybugs, and they were almost exclusively on the flowers and the flower buds. And you can see here, they really go inside those petals. So contact is actually very challenging. So the insecticides used in this trial were basically really put to the test, right? Like how well do they work when we're talking about an insect that is hiding quite effectively? So here are all the treatments, again, for reference for you to take a screenshot or come back to this recording and write down as needed. But you'll notice here 5 treatments, and then I skipped to number 10 because I'm actually going to separate this out into 2 different kind of subgroups because this is a pretty big trial with 10 treatments. But when we look at just the untreated control, we have Ventigra, Velifer, or we have some rotations. So ultra pure oil applied first. And these are the dates here on the far right. You can see the dates that each thing was applied. So we got ultra pure oil, we got Ventigra in capsule. And then we also have a mix that has Velifer in there as well, which is a Bovaria bassiana, which is a biological insecticide. And then we have our Safari, which is dinotefuran. That's kind of the industry standard for what usually works very well on mealybugs. So if we look at our plots here, in this case, mean immature mealybugs per plant, say starting at day 0, right? So this is, you should expect everything to be pretty similar. You can see there's quite a bit of variation. So these vertical bars here represent data around the mean, right? Because all these bars represent an average of several numbers. And the larger this bar is, that means the further the numbers are away from that average, there's greater dispersal. So I like to think of it as a way of knowing kind of how reliable is something, right? If something works really well, not only should the average be very low, but also your variation should be very low. Like all your numbers should be low, not some of them where it didn't really work well. So we look at day 0, Safari is always going to be this orange color, whereas our untreated controls as purple color. So by day 7, we can already see some good suppression by Safari. And we can also see some good suppression when we have the ultra pure oil, Ventigra, and Velifer. Go to day 14, you can see our untreated control up here. You can see our Safari continuing to decrease. And we can see here the ultra pure oil, Ventigra, also continuing to decrease. By day 28, you can see Safari again works very well. Our Ventigra appears to provide some reasonable suppression. Ultra pure oil and then followed by Ventigra seems to work very well, similar to Safari, so throughout. And then lastly, we have our ultra pure oil Ventigra Velifer, which also seems by 28 days after treatment to work quite well. By day 42, look at our untreated control. The number is very low. And this is just to drive a point of why I'm even showing you graphs and not just telling you my conclusions. Because data can't lie, right? My interpretation can, whether it be intentional or unintentional, right? So what's really important is for you to be able to look at these graphs. If I were to tell you right now that, let's say, oh, well, Velifer worked really well by day 42, you should be able to say, well, it didn't work any better than doing nothing. So really, it didn't work better at all. So that's just why I have that day 42. Again, to help you draw those comparisons between a no treatment check and a positive control, such as Safari. So going on, in this case, so in that last one, sorry, we're looking at mean immature mealybugs. If we look at mean mature mealybugs, we see, again, a very similar trend. So we just skip to day 48. You can see untreated control right here. You can see Velifer doesn't seem to work very well, but Safari works very well. Ultra pure oil Ventigra works very well. Ultra pure oil Ventigra, then Velifer rotation also seems to work really well. So our second set of treatments here involved Pradia, either as foliar applications, those 3 rates of the foliar applications, or as a drench insecticide. So if we want to skip right on over, say to day 48, to 28 days after treatment, again, where we're seeing a lot of the bulk of differences starting to show, we can see that Safari, again, obviously works very well. We see Pradia Drench seems to work relatively well. And then we have our Pradia medium and high rates that seem to work very well. Our low rate, arguably may work well, but if you look at the variation, the untreated control, so there are some cases where those populations just decreased. Maybe the buds dropped. And again, because those mealybugs are only on those buds, that there's gonna be a low population of mealybugs on those plants. But with some reasonable confidence, we can say by day 48, it looks like Pradia medium and higher rates had very good suppression. If we look at egg sacs, again, this is mature mealybugs. Again, we see a very similar trend. So we see Safari, again, working very well compared to the untreated control. And then we see, in this case, Pradia, the high application, foliar application rate working quite well, and the drench works reasonably well. Potentially comparable to Safari, the average a little bit higher in this case, but they would not be considered significantly different because of these bars that are kind of overlapping here. All right, and lastly, let's see. Yeah, we got a couple more minutes to go over a major crapemyrtle bar scale trial that we did this year. In this case, we had both standard size. So this is after they were kind of pruned down a little bit. This is Queen's lace. And we had some dwarf, which we thought might work. Insecticides might act very differently, especially because these dwarves are usually a lot more thicker canopies, a lot more branching, and a lot thinner or smaller diameter branches. And so we're testing insecticides on these 2 different ones. And I'm sure many of you that are tuned in by now are familiar with crapemyrtle bark scale. If not, go to stopcmbs.com. And that's where we have a lot more information on crapemyrtle bark scale, current insecticides that we know work very well, the damage they cause, their population dynamics from year to year, so on and so forth. We also did do some flower count data. Now, this data is all hot off the press. So I'm only going to show you a bit of it, but in December, I will give basically a full, give this data my full attention in another webinar that we will give then. So these are all the treatments. All right, there's a whole ton of treatments, and this is only the treatments on Queen's lace. So Pokemoke has its own series of treatments. Again, just up here for your reference, you can go back to the recording, or you can take a screenshot. Just because it's listed here doesn't mean it works well, right? These are what we tested. So let's go through them piece at a time. So this is on Queen's lace. This is week number of the year, and this is average number of male pupae per branch. So you're actually seeing the white spots on there. So if we look at our untreated control, right, by week 14, 18, 20, but then by week 25, we start to see this increase in the average number of male pupae. We start seeing all those white spots on there, which is no bueno. Our nuke it option, all right, so this is what I call the nuke it because so far in all the trials I've done, it provides very good control. And that's an early dinotephoron drench, or known as safari commonly, and followed by a spray of Talus. Let's see, Talus. What is it in this case? Yeah, it is Talus. Talus bupropion when crawlers start to emerge, so mid-April and then near the end of April. And you can see here that it's just very low. We look at merit, that's imidacloprid, also provides very good suppression of the male pupae. We look at just Talus alone, also provides very good suppression. And lastly, Altus appears to provide reasonable suppression. Now, we do see an increase. So if you're a nursery grower and any white spots on there is going to be a stop sale, this might not be sufficient. But in the landscape, this may be okay. It's going to provide enough suppression for aesthetic purposes. Now, if we look at, so I'm going to maintain this nuke it option and our untreated control for just comparisons here. If we compare them to, say, Expire, you can see here that, and that's from Corteva, you can see that Expire seems to provide some reasonable suppression as well, especially at this 2 times rate. However, probably, again, not sufficient enough for a nursery setting. Now, if we start to look at some of those BASF products, the Ventigra and Velifer, all right, so again, you can see Safari here, untreated check over on up here. You can see that Velifer, this is Velifer alone, seems to do basically nothing against crepe myrtle bark scale. If we do ultra pure oil, then Ventigra, then Velifer, we seem to get some suppression, especially quite a bit later in the season. And again, this might not be sufficient for the nursery, but it might be an okay rotation for, again, say the landscape. And if we look at Ventigra alone, again, we get some very reasonable suppression, again, as compared to the untreated control. Now we switch on over to the dwarf crepe myrtles. Now, I'd only shown you male pupae data, but like I said, I mean, we have female egg sacs, we have flowering data as well that we'll go into in more detail next time around. But here are the treatments that we had for Pokemoke. Again, feel free to take a screenshot or come back to the recording for the details in here. So this was a little bit more interesting, right? So on the Pokemoke, we see this great increase in the number of male pupae, and then all of a sudden decrease by week 33 in the untreated control. So we see this funny pattern going on. So I don't know if the pupae don't hold on to that bark quite as effectively because it is a narrower diameter. So once they emerge, on a larger crepe myrtle, it might still kind of stay on there. I'm not exactly sure. I don't have a very strong explanation for this yet. Like I said, this is data hot off the press. If we look at the Nukem option, very good suppression again. So it works very well again in our dwarf crepe myrtles. Our Expire at a low rate also seems to provide very good suppression of crepe myrtle bark scale. So that'll be worthy of some further investigation. All of our other treatments provided some okay suppression. You'll notice here merit, that's imidacloprid, that 1 in every 3 trials that I do, it doesn't perform very well. It performs okay. So it's kind of this interesting thing that you might want to watch for because it provides excellent to mediocre control. My nuke it option so far out of my probably 8 trials or 7 trials that I've done consistently always provides very good suppression of crepe myrtle bark scale. And that concludes all my data there on crepe myrtle, on my insecticide trials.
All right, our next one is Paul. Paul is going to share with us the plant of the week, petunias.
Okay. Yeah. So our Texas Superstar plant of the week this week are the tidal waves. There are 3 tidal waves that are Texas Superstars. We have the silver
Paul,
and cherry. Yes.
Paul, are you going to share your screen?
I thought I did. Hold on. I guess I didn't.
Maybe the plant of the week is his background.
There you go. How about
There
now?
we go.
We good? Okay. Sorry
It's
about
starting,
that.
it's just starting to share. There it is.
All right.
Okay, great. So we've got Tidal Wave Petunias, and the Tidal or the Wave series has been around. I think they just recently had a 25-year anniversary. So these petunias have been around a while, and the Tidal Wave is one of the iterations of the waves. As the name Tidal would say, this is the largest of the tidal waves. So I guess it fits in perfectly for being a Texas superstar, a Texas plant. This is a large spreading petunia. Currently silver and cherry, which is down here on the right-hand side. That's been a Texas superstar for a while. And then this year, red velour, which is here up in the left-hand corner, was recently added. So for the landscape, and if you want to use this in the landscape, this is one that's it's going to cover a lot of space. So if you've got areas, large areas that need to be covered, and you could probably get by with very few plants to cover that area, tidal waves are ones to consider. I do like the way it presents itself. It's got flowering over the entire plant. So it is a nonstop bloomer, landscape height, especially down here in Houston. We easily 3 feet tall. And the spread, you can see it's going to be anywhere from that. I would tend to think it's going to lend itself more towards say 45 to 60 inches wide, at least in our conditions. So spacing is great because you can get by with fewer plants. A minimum of 12 inches. I would probably feel much better in that 18 to 24. If you're growing these on the production side, you definitely want these in an 8-inch pot or a hanging basket. So now, if you're a landscaper, you're probably going to want something smaller. You'd rather have it in a quart or a 4-inch. So you'd have to work with a grower if you're going to use these to cover an embankment or a large area, and you want them in a smaller pot, because I don't think you want your crews planting an 8-inch pot. You're going to have to ask them to specially grow that. And there's a lot of marketing, there's a lot of branding with the waves. And so when I was in the industry, what we did was if we grew a plant that was a Texas superstar, but we were sort of limited as to how many labels we could put in and things like that. And if you are on the wave rave, the bandwagon, and you're growing in the wave pot and the label, you're probably not going to stick another label in there that says it's a Texas superstar because of the price. But one of the things that we did was we kept track at the end of the year of any of the plants that we grew that were Texas superstars, and then we would just pay a royalty to A&M in order to keep the program going. So, if you are stuck between, I do the whole wave program, but I would like to also push it as a Texas superstar, that is one way to get around it. If you just grow it if you just want to do it with a label and the Texas Superstar label, hey, that's even great. That's great also, because that helps with the name recognition and the name of the program for the Texas Superstar. So if you're looking for an annual cool season, petunias we're right in that season now, at least down here. And you need to cover a lot of space and you want something that's got a lot of flower power. Consider the tidal waves, silver and cherry or red velour. All three are Texas superstars.
All right, thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Yeah, we have some latecomers in the webinar, and some of y'all are probably not quite familiar with the fruit that in my background. Eric is very good. I can't believe that he just got it right. So this specific fruit in my background is persimmon. So in the future we're gonna quiz you guys on what's in my background, or what's in Erfan's background, what's in Paul's background.
Actually, yeah. Does anyone know what's in my background? It's about time the entomologist strikes back.
Just back, yeah. Anyone who doesn't know that's a monarch butterfly?
It's not.
That's not a monarch.
Catherine got it right. Golf fertility.
Oh, wow. Catherine.
The larvae feed on the passion fruit plant.
Oh, I see.
Hey,
Wow.
Irfan, I had a quick question. On that Pokemoke where you saw the population drop on the control, did you see any beneficials on that plant? Twice stab lady beetles or anything that may have feasted on it since there was a good population, and maybe that's why you saw it decline?
Yes. So yeah, we usually in our potted trials see very limited number of predators. There are some, but they're relatively limited. Even then, I would not expect it to fully explain the dramatic decrease that we saw. Now, it's possible, but the populations of predators that we saw were not, so high that I would think would explain that.
Okay.
When the drop? So when is it? During what time of the year?
Let me go back. It was so from week 25 to week 33 of the year. Let me go to my.
The reason I'm asking, it could be just during the valley of the population dynamics, because
I mean, it's possible, but I mean, it'd be interesting to think, because in the Queen's Lace, we did not see that major drop in that same time, pretty much same time period. In Queen's Lace, we looked at weeks 25 and 33, whereas in Pokemon it was 25 and 33. And so, which is actually the same. Sorry, I just repeated the same numbers. Yeah, yeah. So we assessed them the same weeks, and whereas in the Queen's Lace we didn't see that drop off, but in the Pokemoke we do. So there's something happening in the Pokemoke that's different than the Queen's Lace.
Compared to Queen's Lace is a medium-sized kind of standard crapemurder versus Pokemoke is a miniature. It's one of those smallest ones. So I don't know whether the size of the crapemurder, just not enough either surface areas or, nutritional values and stuff, to support the continuing growth of scale. The difference between the two, really, the biggest difference that I see is the size.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one major difference. The second difference would be, I think, just the branching structure in general, with the Pokemoke having a lot more and kind of smaller twigs as compared to the branches of the Queen's Lace. And that's where I was wondering whether those very small branches maybe can't support holding on to those pupae as long or whatever it might be. So, but like I said, that's it's a high speculation at this point. I'd have to dig deeper into our data.
Okay. All right. Well, James Wilhite said that, what's in your background is just your own wings.
No, my wings aren't that beautiful, but thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, for everyone on the webinar, we would really appreciate it if you could fill out the survey for us that help us to improve, the webinars, and, to tell us what you're interested, your needs are. And also I copied and pasted the link to the whole playlist, and the recording of this webinar will also be available through that playlist. So just bookmark the playlist or something, so all of our previous recordings and today's recording will be available on that playlist. So if y'all have any questions, just type it in the chat box and we'll try to answer those. A lot of our audience probably are already familiar with, why, we shouldn't do crapemurder, we shouldn't crapemurder, and hopefully, today my presentation give you more reasons, some more reasons to talk to your client or talk to your family, not to murder those crapemyrtles. If you need any pictures, from me to help you support your claim, I'll be happy to send you whatever I have. So let's just make another effort to stop crape abuse. Irfan, Paul, anything else that you want to add?
I am good.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay. All right. Well, with that, we conclude today's webinar chat with Green Aggies. I hope you all have a great the rest of the afternoon.
Take care.
Bye.